Now that I, a 23-year-old female, am back from Germany, I've had some time to think over the events of my trip, but it's hard to think positively considering what happened to me the last night in Stuttgart, and I'd like a place to talk about it. I'd spent about 2 weeks traveling in Germany for the Euros, and considering how many fellow Scotland fans were there for the games, I never felt completely alone despite being a solo traveler in a foreign country. I guess I became too naive in trusting the older groups of Scots who buy me drinks and chat with me all night about where they're from and who they knew. Just typical Scottish chats, and I let my guard down. That last night in Stuttgart happened like most other nights in Germany. I'd be by myself and would get noticed by a group of older men or women who'd inquire about who I was with. When they heard that I was alone, they'd remark at how brave I was as a good-looking lassie, being there all by myself. I'd then be integrated into the group, drink with them, celebrate with them, and that night, cry with them after Scotland's loss. Determined to enjoy my last night, I said goodbye to my new friends, donned a short white dress draped in my Scotland flag, and went out looking for a good place to drink and dance with strangers I'd never meet again. I met a few people that night, but it was while I was alone that I met him. "That bag's bigger than you are." I heard a jolly older man wandered over to me. It was true. I had my rucksack with me that night. "Where's your boyfriend to carry it for you?" "I'm not sure yet, still deciding if he's going to be German or Scottish," I quipped back with a smile. Most of my interactions would start this way, with a friendly comment leading to an offer to come drink with their group. And after offering to take me to a nearby Irish pub to drink with him and his family, I graciously accepted and we began walking. He was overly exaggerating how incredible he thought I was for doing this alone, bowing to me and excitedly telling passerbys how brave I was. I would smile awkwardly and change the subject. I wish I could say alarm bells were ringing, but they weren't. And after all, he was just a wee Scottish grandpa, one of many that I'd met that night. He began prodding on me if I had somewhere to sleep that night, remarking how they had room in their hotel if need be. "I wouldn't force myself on you or anything." And I froze. It was so unexpected. I truly looked at him for the first time since I had met him. He was a relatively short man, taller than me, with a larger build and wrinkles to match the white hair poking out from under his Scotland cap. He quickly explained how he knew that I'd be cautious about that sort of thing, being a smart girl, and that I could trust him. But again reiterated that he wouldn't force himself on me. I laughed nervously as all the beer I'd drunk earlier seemed to drain from my body, and I began taking in my surroundings. "Where did you say your family were again?" "Just an Irish pub up this hill. So like I was saying." I didn't really pay attention to him. We were still on the populated main street of Stuttgart, but the numbers were dwindling the further we went. My ears pinged an alert to my brain signaling that I had just missed something important or horrifying, so I mustered up a smile and politely said, "What did you say, sorry?" "That I'm a vegetarian, because I killed my 44th man in a vegetable field." "Oh, I've deployed in loads of countries. The first 6 lives I took were in Ireland." And my blood ran cold. I am a descendant of Irish immigrants who fled to Scotland to escape the brutality of the Troubles in Ireland. Did this man kill my family? Killed 12 in Iraq. I could only listen to parts of his ramblings as I began desperately planning my escape, locking eyes with every person that walked past. There weren't many. We had almost reached the top of the main street now. "Why are you so tense all of a sudden?" The words brought me back to the conversation. "You know, I can read you like a book. I'm doing all this for you, see? I want to protect you. And Molly, I can guarantee you right now, you don't realize how much danger you're in." I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder, spinning round to see a young German man smiling at me. "Scotland," he mentioned to my flag. "I love Scotland." Is there anywhere to eat around here?" I blurted out, staring at him, praying that I'd turn around and the old man would be gone. Brief confusion crossed the German man's face before the old man began rapidly jumbling up the sentence "Sprechen Sie Deutsch" in an attempt to sound as if he was speaking German. "Essen," I whispered, and the young man pointed in the direction we had just walked from. "There's a McDonald's down there." I turned back to the old man, whose look I could only describe as emotionless, as if he was staring through me, like I was no longer there. I felt another cold shiver before smiling. "I'm gonna go grab something to eat, but I'll meet you at the Irish pub later." As if snapping back to his jolly self, the man quipped, "Now don't be like that. I'm off to a rave just now. I'm playing at it. You don't want to miss out. I'll catch you later." I smiled, and the man's face again dropped into a blank stare before he turned and walked off. I think the German man called after me, but I didn't hear him. I kept my head down and walked wherever my feet wanted to take me. I couldn't think, only walk. I don't know how I got to the train station or how I got to the hostel. There were no Irish pubs in Stuttgart, or at least not in that direction.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Have you ever experienced the feeling of drifting off to sleep on public transportation, only to awaken several stops beyond your intended destination? It's happened to me multiple times, but this one incident I had a few months ago has imprinted itself in my mind. My boss overworks me to the point where I feel like I work in a factory, not a company. By the time I finish work, my body and mind are so exhausted that I frequently find myself nodding off, whether it be a bus or a subway. I never imagined being in a dangerous situation until one evening. "Oh, Portia, I told you a dozen times, why aren't you opening your email? Go through it and you will find the draft." It was the fourth time she called me in the past 20 minutes to ask the simplest thing. Whenever I talked to her, I always wondered why in the world he hired her as a secretary if I had to do most of her work. Why not just double my pay and let me handle it officially? It was way past my work time, and I was not only tired but frustrated as well. Who wouldn't be when they feel as underpaid as I was feeling then? I walked to the bus stop and waited for my bus to arrive, which took about 15 minutes. After boarding the bus, I went to sit in an empty window seat, and the moment I did, my phone started ringing. My sleep-deprived mind made me curse a little louder when I saw Portia's name on the screen, making the lady sitting in my front seat turn around and give me a weird look. After declining it and turning my phone off, I leaned on the seat. Trust me, the back of my head was throbbing. I was this close to handing in my resignation letter if I had to explain to her the way to find the draft one more time. I was so tired that I didn't even realize when I dozed off. As I jolted from my sleep, I turned around, groaning, to see a frustrated woman scolding her child for kicking the back of my seat. To my surprise, only 3 other passengers were on the bus besides the misbehaving child. This was unusual, as the bus was typically packed with commuters when I usually disembarked. Then I realized I had not simply missed my stop, but had unknowingly traveled several stops past it. I got off at the next stop to board a bus back to my place, only to discover that the vicinity was far more remote than I had initially anticipated. While waiting for my bus, I noticed a man approaching my direction leisurely, donning a trench coat. To take precautionary measures, I hastened to pull out my phone, switched it on, and placed 911 on speed dial in case the situation called for it. He strolled over to the corner of the stop, extracted his cell phone, and proceeded to peruse it. Given the late hour and the fact that we were in such a secluded area, I was gripped with fear and prayed for the bus to arrive soon. After about 10 minutes, I felt slightly at ease when he remained focused on his cell phone. However, my relief was short-lived as I saw another man approaching the bus stop. He was walking in an odd manner, which led me to assume that he might be drunk. As he drew closer, he stood right next to me, causing me to feel uneasy. I immediately distanced myself from him. It was at that moment that I became fully aware of my surroundings. I was standing in the middle of the bus stop with two men on either side. This realization made me feel even more scared than I already was. To calm myself, I kept checking the time to see how long it would take until the bus arrived. Unfortunately, it seemed like there were still a few minutes left, which only added to my worry. Suddenly, I sensed an intense gaze directed toward me, and it became evident that it was coming from the intoxicated man. I attempted to avoid eye contact, but could sense him moving closer. Despite my efforts, I could feel his grin fixed on me. I rechecked the time, but I felt his nose brushing against my hair before I could react. The sensation sent a shiver down my spine as he sniffed me. I hastily distanced myself from him, only to be pushed closer towards the other man. Overwhelmed, I felt a lump form in my throat as I addressed the drunken man. "Can you please stop this?" However, rather than ceasing, he leaned in closer with a disgusting grin on me. I was ready to dial 911 when I found a hand behind me reaching the man's throat. I turned as I realized it was from the man in the trench coat. He had a pissed expression on his face as he threw a punch to the drunk man's jaw. I heard him say, "How dare you?" along with something else I couldn't understand as he continued beating the living hell out of him for several minutes before leaving him unconscious. The bus arrived shortly afterward, and we both got in. He didn't say anything to me or even look in my direction as he headed to an empty seat at the back of the bus and resumed whatever he was doing on his phone. As for myself, I opted to sit in a seat closer to the front. Though I couldn't shake off the fear and discomfort that had come with my alarming experience, I still felt a sense of security in his presence. 15 minutes later, I finally reached my destination and hastened towards my apartment complex, all while keeping an eye out for any potential threats. Fortunately, I made it back unscathed. As for my daily routine, I continued with it as usual, but with the added precaution of never dozing off in public transportation again. Though I never encountered the man in the trench coat again, I remain grateful for his help that day. There are people like that creepy man I encountered at the bus stop that makes you feel scared, unsafe, and skeptical towards others when you find yourself in a similar situation. And then there are people like the guy who helped me, who instills a sense of hope and restores your faith in humanity.
About a year ago, in my final semester in college, I worked at a department store in the mall. I didn't have a car yet, so I asked for the day shifts because it was a 2-hour bus ride back home. So basically, if I had a closing shift, I'd get done at 11 but not get home until around 1 a.m. But sometimes I'd be given a closing shift, much to my annoyance since I had class at 6 a.m. And my mother worries about me because who wants their kid on public transportation at night? My managers, being the jerks that they were, gave me a week of closing shifts, knowing my situation. I was pissed, but whatever. So one night, I had just finished my shift and I got on the bus. I sat in the middle of the bus. I was minding my own business with my earbuds in. I usually did that because I didn't like people talking to me, so I made it look like I was listening to music. And I occupied myself by playing a crossword puzzle on my phone. About 5 seats behind me, I hear these guys speaking Spanish. Now, my mother is Dominican, but people never know that I am, so while I understand a fair bit of Spanish, I don't speak it. So I hear them talking, but I don't pay any attention because it's rude to eavesdrop. All until they say, "That kid in front of us." Then my ears perk up. I keep my earbuds in so that they think I can't hear them. And I continue to listen. What they're saying is horrific. To paraphrase it, they knew my stop because they've been watching me for this week. And to put it simply, they were planning on snatching me. I heard them say that I'll disappear like the others. I was about 20 minutes away from home, so I knew I had to act quickly. Since I knew they could see me, there were 5 seats behind me, but like a cross, if that makes sense. I pretended to play on my phone, oblivious while I was actually texting my mom. Then all of a sudden, one of the guys moved 3 seats ahead of me, and the other one moved about 3 seats behind me. And we're the last ones on the bus. I text my mom, "Can you please meet me at the bus stop?" 5 minutes go by, no answer. We're getting closer to my stop, so I decided to call her cell. No answer. I'll call the house phone and she finally answers. At this point, it's about 12:30 a.m., so she was asleep. I try to talk as calmly as I can. This was our conversation. "Hey, Mom, did you get my text?" No. What's up?" "Oh, I sent you a picture of these jeans I'm gonna order online when I get home. I really need your opinion, so I really need you to look, since the sale ends at 1 a.m. She gets the hint that I need her to look at her cell phone, so I say goodbye and I hope for the best. I tied my Adidas very tight. We get to my stop, and I see my mom's car. I stand up. Then the man in front of me stands up. Then the guy behind me stands up. I snatch my stuff and I sprint to the door, and I got off the bus with both men behind me, both yelling at each other to grab me. I didn't even look behind me. My mom sees the whole thing and jumps out of the car. I yell at her to get back in the car because they couldn't catch me. I hauled ass. I jump in the car and I tell my mom, "Just go." I look in the rear view and I see the guy staring at the car. The next morning, I called my job and I tell them that I quit. No more public transportation for me. Thanks to my mom for teaching me Spanish, and thanks to my mom for getting the hint.
Last year, after a blissful first year of living in a new apartment, all on my own for the first time, a man moved in next door that I will never forget. The layout of the apartment is crucial to understand this incident, so I made a little diagram floor plan taken from the closest thing I could find online and edited. The most important part is that my balcony and his balcony are only partially separated by a wall, and there is a solid 2-foot gap in which you can easily walk from one to the other. For context, I previously had a very lonely woman living next door for the entire first year I lived there, who never crossed this balcony threshold without being explicitly invited. I only throw this in there so you can understand I wasn't previously concerned about someone infiltrating my space. The first time I met this new neighbor, and he was unloading groceries from his massive truck into the assigned parking spot next to mine. As I was driving up, he and a girl I assumed to be his girlfriend were unloading boxes from Costco. I noticed them speaking, and as soon as I was out of the car, they went silent. I nodded to them, proceeded to the elevator, and the guy ran up behind me, threw some boxes down, and begged me to wait. No problem, I'm a good neighbor. While in the elevator, the girlfriend refuses to make eye contact or speak to me. A little weird, but I just thought she was shy. But he quickly introduced himself and was extremely chatty. In the 45 seconds it takes to get the floor where our apartments are, he asked how I liked the place, where I was from, and where I worked. Looking back, his enthusiasm was a little strange, but I chalked it up to him being excited to be in a new place. For the sake of the rest of this story, we'll call him Sam. Sam was maybe 33, 6 foot tall, with a slim, muscular build, and had hair bust extremely short, as if the mask is balding. Pretty average looking by all accounts. The first few weeks we run into each other often, and always make small talk, and always refers to me as Miss. I assume it's because he forgot my name, but wanted to be polite. I almost never see his girlfriend after the first night, but occasionally I can hear him talking to a lady in his apartment as the walls are reasonably thin. One night, about 3 months after Sam moved in, my boyfriend is spending the nights, and we were watching movies on the couch. It's maybe 11:30 p.m. The back of the couch is against the wall I share with Sam, and we hear some banging noise. My first thought is that him and his girlfriend must be getting it on. Boyfriend and I laugh and turn the volume up a bit to drown them out. Then, in addition to the banging, the neighbors begin to scream. We can hear objects being thrown, glass shattering. The words are muffled, but there's distinctively anger and crying going on. My boyfriend, Jim that he is, steps onto the semi-shared balcony and in his loudest voice heels over without crossing on the Sand's balcony. "Everything okay in there?" The girl opens the sliding door on Sam, sight a minute or two later, and says sorry about that. So we leave it alone. I'm concerned, but we have no idea what actually happened and decide to go to bed. Big mistake, I know. I wake up around 3 a.m. to more screaming, but my boyfriend refuses to wake up, and I'm not about to take my 5-foot self to break up whatever is going on at 3 a.m. I considered calling the police, but was so drowsy, I convinced myself I dreamed it. I deeply regret that decision. The next morning, I woke up to some terrible personal news, an entirely unrelated death of a friend, and pretty much put the events of that night on the back burner. I didn't forget, but it also wasn't on my mind. Fast forward about 2 weeks. It's a warm day, and I'm outside reading a book in a robe, bra, and shorts. I'm going to chair the faces away from Sam's apartment, so I can't see his side from where I am. I'm deep in my book, when suddenly I get a tap on the shoulder. Sam is standing behind me and asked if we can talk for a second. This man has already crossed an albeit invisible line by coming on my side of the balcony, but I also can't get to my door without physically moving him aside. So I asked him what's going on. He told me it was his birthday and asked if I knew where to get some Mary Jane because I seem like a girl who knows how to have a good time as we live in a state where that stuff is legal. I told him that I'm sure Google would provide the best dispensary in the area, but I personally didn't have any. He proceeds to tell me how drunk he got last night, and at this point, I'm itching for an exit. As I start to move as if to signal I'm done talking, he reaches out from my shoulder and tells me he hit and scratched my car last night because he was driving very, very wasted. Remember his massive truck? He says all of this with a smile on his face, almost laughing. I'm surprised, but mostly when I get away from him because my creep senses are starting to tingle, and I don't want to blow up at him for hitting my car. He says he'll send me his insurance info if I give him my number, and thankfully, I knew that would be a bad call. I made a bad, nervous joke about knowing where he lived and said if the damage was bad enough, I would knock on his door to get his insurance. He counters by saying he will leave a note with his info on my door. He retreats from the balcony while also saying he'd prefer to just pay me cash and not involve insurance. I give it an hour or so, and then I head down to assess the damage. I did this because I didn't want to walk down at the same time as him and risk having him follow me. Sure enough, there are 2 long new scratches on the driver's door and knock deep, just kind of superficial or worthy of a call to insurance immediately. I really just didn't want to get involved with him in any way, so I decided I could deal with the scratches. But this little event has kind of shaken me. At this point, I knew something was off with him. Nothing unusual happens as far as I'm aware this night. The next day is Saturday, and as I had to work the next day, I'm home alone, watching some action, a movie, and it's around 11 p.m. I'm on the sofa with my cat curled up on me, and the movie is relatively loud, so it takes me a little while to register this banging noise coming from the hallway of my apartment building. I honestly only noticed because my cat had woken up and got all puffed up and freaked out. I turned down the volume of the film, and suddenly, the banging is getting louder and louder. And just as I stand up, I hear the 5 words no one wants to hear coming from their door. "Open up. It's the police." My stomach dropped to the floor. I had lied to Sam the day before. I totally did have some ganja on me, and I had smoked a joint outside on the balcony, the part furthest away from Sam's, maybe 20 minutes before. I'm totally panicked, high as a kite, and trying to control my breathing so I don't immediately come off as suspicious before I answer the door. I remember checking the people to see a close-up of a cop's face, and then open the door, coming face to face with 6 officers, all with guns drawn. I'm about 0.5 seconds away from completely peeing my pants in fear, still convinced I'm somehow in trouble for smoking a joint. The officer who seems to be in charge can sense instantly the level of panic, and he says, "Ma'am, you're not in trouble. We need to speak with you about your neighbor. Can we come in?" At this point, I'm reeling, and my whole being is tense. I let the cops in, but my heart hasn't moved from my throat. The policeman in charge asked me about any interactions with Sam. I told them I barely know him, that he just lives next door, moved in a few months ago. I asked why they needed to be in my apartment. I'm scared, but also I don't typically get along with cops, and I have the right to know why 6 of them practically waved their guns in my face. The lead officer proceeds to tell me that Sam was a bad guy. He apparently beat his girlfriend so bad the night prior that she's now in the ICU for her injuries. They also told me Sam had a gun and had barricaded himself in the apartment next to mine. They said they had spoken to my building manager and knew my place had access to his balcony, and they needed to use it. Then they asked me to go into the bedroom and lock the doors and turn the lights off. The next 30 to 45 minutes were complete torture. In my panic, I left my cell phone on the kitchen counter and had to sit in my room, just listening to the commotion. No shots were ever fired, but there was a lot of yelling and what sounded like things being thrown. Eventually, after what felt like a lifetime, the main officer knocked on my door and told me that Sam had been arrested and thanked me for letting them use my apartment. They asked me questions for maybe 15 more minutes and left. I wish this is where the story ended. There's a bit more. In the days following Sam's arrest, I became even more panicked about him coming back to the apartment building, worried about retaliation. I hadn't said anything to the police to technically incriminate him. I had proof of nothing except his word that he was the one who scratched my car, but I did tell them about the night my boyfriend and I heard them fight. About 5 days later, Sam reappeared at the building as I was coming home from work one evening. He tried to approach me, but the elevator shut just as he was running to catch it. My whole body got tense, like the feeling when you come this close to getting in a car accident but narrowly avoid it. I stayed off my balcony entirely from this point and always kept the curtains closed. We didn't speak or rarely see each other at all for another few weeks, and then had our final interaction. Sam stopped me in the parking lot one night, running after me as I was about to get on the elevator. He begged me to tell him why I let the cops in that night. I told him the honest truth, but I was stoned, didn't know what to do, and had a bad history with cops. This is all true, and again, I was concerned about him trying to retaliate. He then got pretty upset and kept trying to repeat the question, obviously wanting a different answer. When I couldn't give him one, he then offered me $3,000 to testify as a character witness on his behalf. Because I knew him and knew how he really treated women, I was speechless and very freaked out. He told me his hearing was the next Thursday morning, and he asked if I could show up. I was like a deer frozen in headlights for a moment, and then somehow got out of there after mumbling a string of words that were most likely incoherent. The Wednesday night before his trial, I came home from work and my cat was acting kind of weird, like something had just booked her and her tail was all puffed out. I kind of shook it off, but I noticed through the curtains that there was something taped to the outside of my sliding glass door. Apparently, Sam had left a post-it with his phone number and name, and underneath, "I'm counting on you." Needless to say, I never showed up. I took a photo of the post, had grabbed my cat, locked all of my doors, and stayed at my mom's house for about 5 days after that happened. I did phone the police to let them know he had been on my balcony again, but they never followed up with anything. Eventually, my boyfriend came and went back to my place together. Everything was as it should have been. I never saw Sam again. But a few weeks later, a lady that I'd never seen before was cleaning out his apartment. Maybe a month after that, new people moved in, and things have been normal ever since. I tried calling the police in the county jail to see if he was in lockup again, but no one was able to release information to me. I'm hoping that means he's there, if he did what the police said he did. So to Sam, I will say I'm not really sure what happened, but my biggest regret is not calling the police when I felt like I should have. And my gut and I hope to God I never see you when you get out.